In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the tools available to you inside of Maya for creating and executing Python scripts. The first thing we're going to look at is the command line. This is a line near the bottom of the Maya window. You're going to see either a mel or Python label, followed by the command line input. To the right is where you're going to find the results of the commands that you execute. Now, if you don't have this line visible, you can turn it on from the display menu by selecting UI Elements and then Command Line. If I turn it off, I can quickly turn it back on. By default, it's going to be set to mel. So any commands that you type in this line, it assumes that the command is going to be mel. So in this case, I could type polysphere. And that's going to create a sphere on my screen. In the case of Python, I first have to click the mel label so that it reads Python. And now I can execute Python commands. So if I were to import Maya commands and then run Maya, it does lose focus after you execute each command. This is something that you can change in the preferences though. Now if I'm to write Maya commands.polysphere, open and close brackets, I will have a sphere created again. Only this time I used Python to accomplish it. Now the first thing you might notice is how many more characters I had to type to create this sphere than when I created the mel sphere. Now there is a little extra overhead when using mel commands inside of Python. But this overhead and extra typing is more than offset by the power that you're going to get by using the Python language. So if I delete my sphere, the command line is great for executing one-line commands. However, as you get into more complex scripts, you need something a little more powerful. And this is where Maya's script editor comes in. To open up Maya's script editor, go to Window, General Editors, and select Script Editor. As an alternative, you can select the Script Editor button from the Command Line UI, and this will open up the script editor as well. Now I'm just going to clear my history. I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger. From inside the script editor, I'm now going to write the same commands that I did in the command line. So import maya.commands and then maya.commands.polysphere. Now it's important to always have the open and close braces. To execute this code, I'm going to hold down Control and press Enter. Now if I check my viewport, I'm going to see that the polysphere was created again. One thing you might notice though is that when I executed the code, it disappeared from the input panel. Generally, this is undesirable. You don't want to write 20, 30, 100 lines of code and just have it disappear every time you execute it. This would get really tedious. So in this case, I'm just going to copy and paste from the output window back. And if I don't want this code to disappear, I first have to highlight it and then execute the code. So Control Enter. Now you'll see the text has remained and my sphere has still been created. Now I don't have to run every single line of code every time. This is great when you just want to test out a few different things. So in this case, I'm going to create a cube, polycube, and I'm going to highlight just this one line. Again, if I do Control Enter, now you're going to see that a cube has been created. If I want, I can just run the polycube and polysphere commands, and you'll see that both of them have been created. Now Maya's script editor is very good for doing basic scripts. Unfortunately, as things get more complex, you're going to start to realize the limitations with this editor. Now there are two alternatives. The first is to use an external IDE. An IDE is an integrated development environment. Examples of this would be Eclipse or Wing IDE. Now these can get very complicated, and there are a number of different steps required to set them up to interface directly with Maya. This is something we're going to look at in later lessons. But for now, I'm going to be using a plugin for Maya that's called Charcoal Editor. Charcoal Editor contains most of the features found in Maya's script editor, along with many of the features that you'll find in the leading external IDEs. To quickly show Charcoal, I'll first close the script editor. Now I'm going to open the plugin manager. And here I already have the plugin installed, so I'm just going to load it and set it to auto load. I can now click the script editor button and Charcoal Editor will be displayed. At first glance, it looks very similar to Maya's script editor. But as you start playing around with it, you'll notice a number of differences. On the left-hand side, I've got an outline view, as well as a project view, a display of the open buffers, as well as open documents, and the output window displays results, warnings, and errors color-coded. So if I was to create my sphere again, you'll see that the result is highlighted in green. If I was to make an error and try to run it, the error is highlighted in red. This makes it very easy to track down problems or results as your output window gets filled up with trace. Some of the other benefits of working with Charcoal, if I bring that back, is that I can execute code without it disappearing from the editor. It's no longer necessary for me to highlight code before I run it. I can also execute single lines of code by using the Control-Alt hotkey. So if I have nothing selected, I'll delete my sphere first. Normally, if I have nothing selected and I hit Control-Enter, you'll see that all the lines of code were executed. So I've got my sphere and I've got my cube. If I use the hotkey combination Control-Alt-Enter, it's only going to execute the single line of code that I'm currently on. If I go up to the sphere, Control-Alt-Enter, just the sphere is created. I can still highlight blocks of code and do Control-Enter to execute them as well. Now, for those of you who like to modify the look and feel of your editors, you can also go into the preferences of Charcoal Editor, edit preferences, and along with many other options, you can change the fonts and colors within the editor.